Welcome to the Founder's Diary. So, as you guys know, this is the space where we get to explore what leadership really looks like behind the scenes. Again, this is not a conversation about all the highlights, but this is more about all the inner decisions, identity shifts, moments of uncertainty that shape how we lead. So today's conversation with a very special guest, Ravi Prakash. He is a leadership speaker. He's an author, and he's somebody who works consistently, and he knows how to center himself and move through clarity, resilience, and he knows how to reinvent himself. His journey goes all the way from being an immigrant. His career challenges are something that you'll want to hear. He knows how to lead a company through complexity, cross-cultural organizations. What stood out to me about him wasn't just the scale of his work, but the way he speaks about leadership as something internal before it's external. So in this conversation, we're going to rehash some of the things that people tend to look at, like titles and achievements. We're here to explore all the inner recalibration Ravi does in his leadership style. So I'm really, glad that you are here today. Welcome to the show, Ravi.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting, and let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely, Ravi. Now, you speak a lot about resilience, and I've seen your talks on, be it on TEDx or some of your conversations on other podcasts. So, tell us, what is this uncertainty feeling like that you typically tend to carry, and how does it feel internally for you, and how did you learn not to react from a place of fear?
I think part of the way I think how we are raised, the culture and the environment we grow up, that has to do a lot with how you become. And for me, I believe the environment I grew up in India, with all of the moving parts, whether it was in your own family or whether it was in your community, in the neighborhood, or in the country, there was always a lot of uncertainty about everything from parents' job to income to what's happening in your neighborhood. So I think it becomes part of your fabric. I think one of the best way to probably think about it is if you think of people who grew up in Afghanistan in the last 40 years of that country's history, all they have seen is war, violence, death, destruction, and very brief period of peace. So a child who grows up in that environment, that child's wiring is very different. And when you bring that person to say, this happened to me in person. I was in California last 2 3 years, and it just so happens most of my Uber drivers were from Afghanistan.
Mhm.
And I happened to have a long conversations with them after the ride because they were all young guys, but they looked very confused. And this came out really clearly because they had not seen anything other than violence in their life. And now they are in America and they're not seeing dead body on the streets. They're not seeing gun violence, but they have been so disturbed that they are trying to figure out their place. How do I operate in this environment? There it was all about survival and how do I save myself? How do I survive the next day? And if you see something bad, it was like they were just used to it. Now it's different. So same way I think uncertainty is something that you develop that with your environment and then you come to understand with your own experience, not other people, that if you make that your best friend in terms of not expecting an outcome every single time you do something, it becomes ingrained in your day-to-day work and you don't think about it. You just see it as just another day where you don't know something and you're going to deal with it come what may. And I think that's the bottom line for uncertainty. It is, I think, the nature's way, a very clever way that nature has given us this opportunity to deal with uncertainty so that we are never complacent. we stay on our toes, we stay hungry for whatever it is that we do.
Right. No, I love the answer because what really touched a nerve for me is the fact that you detach yourself from the outcome. And that's a very difficult one because we are also at the same time culturally trained to chase outcomes. And the fact that you instead work towards working with your uncertainty and not detaching yourself, making uncertainty your friend and detaching yourself from an outcome is a good perspective shift that I think uh, that really landed, that resonated a lot with me. And I want to go a little bit into your history as far as, there's a story you talk about where you started off earning $2.36 an hour to leading, large teams. So that's a big shift, just like how you explained, someone coming from an environment of survival mode, there's a big shift they're making in their identity, surviving in a place like America. And likewise, I want to understand what identity that you had to dismantle for you to transition from the $2.36 mindset to somebody who's leading a large team.
I think so. The 236 is when I first came to America 36 years ago. That was the wage I got for the job I was doing. Whether it was at the convenience store or on campus, that was $2.36 an hour, and you had to learn to survive. So at that time, my identity at a higher level mainly was a student. I was a student. I was trying to just make a living in a new country, getting to know the country, how things work, and you watch other people do things. I had a chance to meet some really impressive people in my very first year. I met Dr. Norman Borlaug, the only person in the world who got Nobel Prize for Life Sciences, who played a big role in Green Revolution in India and stuff. So I had 2 hour one-on-one with him, which
Mhm.
gave me a lot of, it was an impressive 2 hour. I couldn't believe I had the time with him. But one of the biggest shifts, I think, for most people is not thinking small. Forget whatever the thought process and the belief that you are capable of more, bigger, better. Not always bigger is better, but you can do something better. You can do something different. You can be somebody, something other than what you are today. And the moment you can understand that at a very visceral level in yourself, I think the game changes, absolutely changes. And in that, I would say, in those days for the first 9 years, it was very hard because financially I was completely broke. And, I couldn't even invite somebody for a cup of tea. If people would say, hey, let's go to the cafeteria, I would always find an excuse to say no because you're paying $2 for a cup of tea. That's not going to happen. So all of that, the people, everybody reacts differently. Some people can just become depressed and not do anything with that kind of situation. And then there are others who say, well, that is a temporary situation. It is today. It's like the weather. It's winter now, but spring and summer is going to come.
Right.
And so you prepare in this winter of your life to train, to study, to learn, to network, all that stuff. And so you can shift your mindset from saying, I'm just going to work hard and go somewhere, to I'm going to work hard and smart, and I am going to also lead myself in the way I want to lead, not in the way society expects me to lead. And when you start to lead yourself, you develop your self confidence. When you develop that self confidence, what I call an element of faith in self, then I think anything is possible. So leadership, you don't want to, there are leaders of all kinds in every phases of life, but that's where you start to lead yourself. And then once you do that, you don't have to beat your chest to tell people what you do. People will notice. Whether it's your health, for example. This is one example, I'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
If you learned, in those 9 years, one of the most important thing that helped me continue to do what I did was, even in that cold weather, even when I didn't have money, I always went for a run. Running was my salvation. It helped me clear my head. It helped me just feel like I'm top of the world. That allowed, that discipline of running allowed me to be in that peak state of mind in spite of all the things that was happening in my life. That was my pillar. And so people noticed that in spite of all this, I always had good spirit.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's one example. Everybody has their own thing. You got to figure that out. What is your
Correct.
thing?
Correct.
And that will allow you to move from one identity, because we have unlimited identity in this world.
Exactly.
And that's one example how you can move from, one identity to another, to not just survive but thrive. Because sometimes if you hold on to the same identity, the very identity that helped you at that time will not help you in the future.
I think the takeaway for me here is how you build yourself, right? I think you're planting the seeds in the winter, and that's how you're crafting your identity slowly for the future that is about to come, and then having faith, knowing that it's cyclical. There is going to be good times, you're going to have bad times, but how do we remain consistent with the right attitude? As you mentioned with your running and everything that you were doing, I think that's how you kept your spirits up. So, which is amazing takeaway here on that question. I want to move a little bit about, a little bit about burnout. There's a lot of conversation around people have are exhausted. They have too many challenges. There are too many expectations, big numbers to hit. So in your experience, like where do leaders most confuse discipline with, not working through what they're supposed to do, which ends up becoming, exhaustion.
So corporate world is inundated with KPIs and deliverables and timelines, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need all that. We all in our life need to have certain level of accountability, goals and mission and things like that. But what gets lost in this noise is the driver. KPI is a noun. So that's why in my career, as somebody in the project and program management space, timeline, cost, quality, people, this was a constant. And then when you work with corporate, publicly traded company, there's a pressure on, do you have enough margin on your projects? Yes, you delivered a good project, but was it on a 0% margin or negative or X number margin? And when we just focus on that, we become the spreadsheet companies. Leaders become slave to the spreadsheets, and they make all the decision based on those spreadsheet, and they forget the driver, the human being behind that. At the end of the day, we need to understand, and the best simple example I'll give you is, if you are overweight and you want to lose weight, so your KPI is, I'm 400 pounds, I want to be 150 pounds. Now, if you just focus on those two things, nothing is going to happen. That's just a static number. But if you focus on, okay, now I need to see how much I sleep, how much water I drink, what kind of food I'm eating, what kind of movement I'm doing, what kind of things I'm reading, who I'm associating myself with. These are drivers. If you take care of these drivers, your KPI will be taken care of on its own. You don't have to think about 400 and 150 pounds. And this is a big difference in people. And we, a lot of people in the corporate world are scared to listen to their own body. And I'll give you one example. In my last job, there was a time when I was managing 7 different enterprise projects, very stressful, 60, 80, 90 hour weeks, week after week after week, months, literally the whole 2 3 years was like that. There came a time when I'm pretty fit, and yet I was feeling absolutely exhausted.
Mm.
And for the first time in my career, I told my boss I'm going to take a month off and I'm not going to be reachable. And everybody tried to tell me just take 10 days off and go. I said no. I know myself much better. 10 days is not going to cut it. I know exactly how I'm feeling. I need to take more than 10 days. And I took
Right.
1 month off. I cut myself off. I didn't send a single email, no text, no phone calls. I just cut myself off from the world. And I went to a very nice health resort where I go there for yearly water fasting. I did 10 days of water fasting. I was among my peers who all care for their health. We talk about health, fitness, and education and all that stuff.
Mm.
And that 1 month, for many people, that
Mhm.
is a waste of time. In the
Right.
corporate world, that will be seen as a waste of time. But I can tell you, it's like a pit stop in your life. If you don't take those pit stops and nourish yourself and take care of your health, all these KPIs will just eat you alive.
Right.
So that is what I would say is, when you have discipline without compassion,
Mhm.
that's not going to last too long. You got to
Right.
have compassion for you, yourself first, and then
Mhm.
all the people around you that you are working with.
Right. What I like is the orientation. It's like, where do you put your focus on, instead of the numbers, which tend to be like the lead indicators, but instead you're telling us, no, focus a little bit on the areas that will cause the number should be a reflection of the habits, not the goal in itself, I suppose. I think that's the best way I can
all
sum
the
up.
steps. So for example, if I'm talking about, we are implementing a software project and you have to do XYZ, so certain things happen with their software. If I simply focus on the outcome of their software versus saying, okay, is my architecture properly done? Is all the team members chemistry good? They understand each other. I have a UX designer, I have a back end developer, I have a front end developer, I have a performance testing guy, I have an AI guy. Are they all understanding our mission together? Is everybody able to do their part? And they understand what does the definition of done. If I say I'm done with something, it's my understanding, but does that definition of done same as Poonam's definition of done? Because if I give you something that you think is not done, then I have not understood your requirement. So those are the drivers. If we understand that, and it'll never be perfect, but that's where we need to focus, where the team has a chemistry and they understand each other's definition of done and handovers. We do that, you can create miracles in any
Right.
project.
Right, right. And speaking of chemistry, I know you've led cross-cultural, like, teams across borders. There's a lot of power dynamics involved. So what leadership behavior you think erodes trust when the pressure is high in an environment like that?
So I go back to one thing: human beings, irrespective of the background differences, all that stuff, human beings have the same need no matter where you go in the world. It's
Mhm.
the same need, desire, mm, kind of, food, water, shelter, security. All this stuff is global.
Right.
Now, when you are leading a large team in a new country or new culture where we have lots of people, you have to come from a place of humility. You have to try to get to know them, connect with them, understand some local nuances of the place.
Mhm.
Whether it's few words you learn, whether it's sitting down with the team, and never coming from a place that I'm better than you.
Mhm.
And I think once you build that kind of connection, um, magic happens. And I'll give you one example. In 2017, I went to Argentina to lead one of the largest projects we had, the largest project in our company at the time. The project had been on for almost a year and a half. We had every problem under the sun you can think of on that project: product, process, people, you name it, it was there.
Mm.
We had about 65 people in our team, although the client had hundreds of people on that project. And then I hired about 70 people. So we had about 125, 130 people on the team. But the trust level with our corporate leaders was zero. The
Mm.
local team didn't really trust much based on all the, I'm not saying right or wrong, but they felt their feeling was zero. So for the first 2 weeks or so, when I arrived there to lead the project, people won't even say good morning to me. When I said good morning, they won't say good morning back to me. And it was very perplexing to me. And the most common question asked of me was, when are you leaving?
Oh,
And yeah, and I was like, I ignored it the first 2 weeks, and then finally the third week I took some people out for a walk, and I said, okay, help me understand why you guys keep asking me when are you leaving.
right. Right.
And what they said was that for the last year and a half, Ravi, a lot of people came from the US. They said many things, but they never came back. And there I had this light bulb go up in my head, and say, okay, so there was no trust, there was no sense that anybody cared for them. And so
Mm-hmm.
from that day, for 3 months, I literally had a notebook in my hand and a pen,
Mm-hmm.
and I walked about 5 to 6 miles inside our office building every single day. We had a big warehouse office, 4 floors, so I had to walk all over the place. But I sat with every single team member every single day with my notebook
Mm-hmm.
to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
And the same team that was doing fairly, they were struggling.
Right.
The same team transformed. The client, not that it was perfect, but we transformed that from totally almost 100% from where we were to where we became. And it was a team effort, but the way you build the trust was to be with them, to understand that we had a lot of people from Venezuela, and there were team members who had just arrived in Argentina,
Right.
one person earning, 10 people at home in one room. They were living in one room. There were
Mm-hmm.
team members who were not having lunch because they didn't have money. And
Okay.
people in San Francisco did not know this stuff. I had to go and figure this out. Nobody told me this, but I was observing people. And when I
Mm-hmm.
came to find out, I started buying lunch every single day, which I was kind of not harshly, but I was disciplined to some extent to say, why are you spending this money? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, look, when many people come from US to visit Argentina, their one bottle of wine pays for the whole week of lunch.
Oh.
So I made those arguments, I stuck to, and I always operate with the idea that I can lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't worry about that part. I always worried about what is the right thing to do for the team, because I knew what they were doing, how hard they were working. And if you're not eating proper lunch or breakfast and you're working 60, 80 hours a week, how are you going to operate?
Right.
So all of those, I'm giving an example to give you, these are simple things that we can do as leaders to transform a team, build a today I go to Argentina and I can meet 500 people in one week. That's the kind of relationship I've built with the team, and
Mm-hmm.
great experience. So that's an example of how we can easily connect with people and leave your, this is another thing that's very important, is that when you go outside of your home, whether it's in the same country, you leave your home, you go to somebody else's home, or you leave your country and go to another country, don't expect what you had at home.
Mm-hmm.
Expect the unexpected. That is absolutely essential for you to have a great time, connection, and you learn and grow. Because if I go with the mindset, I have to have everything that I had at home in this new place, One, I'm not connecting with people, I'm not learning, I'm already prejudging every single thing that I'm going to experience.
Mm.
That's where you a well-lived life is all about experiences.
Right, right.
And this is a classic example. If you want to live a well-lived life, whether in your home or outside, you got to be able to learn something from others.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like it because I think what you just shared is a classic example of servant leadership, right? Where the forefront factors here is humility and compassion. And I think that's how you navigated that situation when you were overseas. I want to shift gears a little bit
I will just say
towards.
this:
Mhm.
authenticity builds faster than your composure. So if you just pretend to be something, people are not fooled, they see it.
Mm,
So if you are authentic, it will help you to build a relationship with people. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, that was actually my next question for you. This was, all about authenticity having a cost. You talk about that in your book, Safar, right? That's
Mhm.
your immigrant's journey that shared your story with the world. So, what was the most expensive moment of authenticity in your leadership journey? And, why do you think it's still worth it?
I think I've had many of those, several experiences. So I don't know if I would rate them as expensive, but they were at different points in life, they were expensive in some ways. But it was also very eye-opening, and it was also it helped build that thing I call the element of faith. Every time you fall, you get up, you fall, you get up, and you build that thing. So I'll share with you two experiences which I thought were, will help people understand.
Mhm.
One was I was working for a company one time. I was in Latin America, and we got acquired by a very big company. And at the time, we had most of the people in our company at the time, 300-400 people, were all immigrants whose visa was being processed, green card. And
Mhm.
the company that acquired us, basically, we had conflicting information given to us every single day, and they were going to close our office, but they were pretending they won't. And then they were
Mhm.
going to pull out everybody's application, immigration application. And they had some senior leaders had come to visit us in Brazil at the time, and they said what they said. And I had a pretty good gut feeling that this is all face saving exercise, this is show and tell, but there's nothing behind it. So I didn't tell anybody. Everybody has come to know about this after I wrote the book. Nobody
Mhm.
knew all these years. This happened in 2002, and nobody knows about this till I wrote the book. But I just told my wife in Brazil at the time, and our daughter was like 6 months, I think, at the time. I
Mhm.
said, look, I'm going to go to Atlanta on
Mhm.
my own money, and when I come back, I may not have a job. But
Mhm.
we have to do this. And so
Mhm.
I flew to Atlanta on my own cost. I met one of the senior leaders who managed North America for them. He was there in Brazil 2 days ago. And
Mhm.
I didn't have an appointment. I just walked in. The secretary tried to stop me. I said, no, today you're not stopping me. I walked in and I spoke to him. He didn't even remember me from 2 days
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm.
Then I reminded him, I said, I'm here for only one reason. I'm not here to beg you.
Mhm.
I'm here to impress upon you that all of us, these thousands of people in the company, we helped build the company that you bought.
Mhm.
So you have the right to do whatever you want to do, but you can leave the integrity on the table and fairness. That's it.
Mhm.
I said, all these people you're trying to get rid of, they stopped the immigration paper. The fee has already been paid to the lawyers, and it's a matter of just waiting. You don't have to pull
Mhm.
their application out.
Mhm.
Leave it there. And the other part was many of them were on H-1B, so and they were outside the country. So if you let them lay them off, they may not be able to come back. And they all had family, house, this, that in the U.S. And I don't think so. They took it seriously when I was talking about it. And
Right.
so he basically tested me that day. He turned around on his printer was the name of every single person in my office. And he started to quiz me. I said, I know everybody. And I literally knew people from Germany to Malaysia to India to US. I knew everybody pretty much. So he asked me about 10 names. And I knew all those 10 people. I knew their husband, wife, kids. I knew everybody. So he knew I wasn't kidding. So I told him, I'm not leaving this office until you give me in writing that you will not pull the application. And he said, oh, take care of it. I said, no, if you do this, I'm going to go to the US immigration office myself and file a formal complaint that this is misuse of how if people were hired here, they have to be fired here in the US. At that point, and then I had a folder, this thick folder, which had all the communication in the last 6, 8 months, which contradicted each other. One guy said this, another guy said that. I said, I'm going to take this file to them and show them that we were lied to. And at that point, he got serious. He called the head of the global HR. She got on the call. She was trying to think that I was not serious. I said, look, don't play with me. I'm here dead serious. At that point, they gave it to me in writing and I left. And today, almost all those 400 people, my colleagues, me included, everybody is a productive citizen of this country and we are all doing what we do. So
Wow.
but I lost my job a few months after that, and many other people did. But the point was, I wasn't going to let the visa issue cloud my judgment on what was right thing to do. And that time I was totally like I wasn't established at all. I was in Brazil, I was on H-1B, I didn't have anything certain in my life. I was still paying that 100,000 in my student loan. So I was financially totally broke. I wasn't in a position, any position to say, okay, I'm going to be okay. But I knew that was the right thing to do. So people have to really, really um, stand up. I had lost another job. A few years later, I managed 5 countries in Latin America. And there was one guy who would always make this big promise to the team, but I never saw anything happen. And then
Mhm.
after 18 months, there was a time I was in Atlanta on my trip back from South America. He called me saying, Ravi, blah, 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 this is something major was happening in production. He had no idea what that issue was. But he said, how can I help you? And at that day, I couldn't help it. I said, look, you don't even understand the problem. How can you help me? And he said, oh, do you know who you're talking to? I said, I know perfectly well who I'm talking to. But I cannot keep my mouth shut when in 18 months I've never seen one thing happen that you promised to the team. And 2 hours later, I lost my job,
Mhm.
which I'm perfectly okay with because it's the only way. Now, there are people who will play it diplomatically, they will do different things, which is, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. For me, it doesn't work because I have to live with me.
Right. Right.
And so everybody has to understand who they are deep down inside. If you are living a fake life where they say fake it till you make it, I've never adhered to that advice. That's the worst advice I can give to anybody. All I say is if you are not where you want to be, then there's only two ways you have to do. Either you increase your level of competence and things to get to where you want to be, or you reduce your expectation and be where you are. Then you will be okay. But if you are here and you want to be here and you don't do anything to get there, all you're doing is you're being frustrated. Every day you're going to be frustrated saying, oh, I want to be there, but I'm not there. Well, you have
Mhm.
to change. You have to become that person. Again,
Right.
never trying to be perfect,
Right. Right.
just understand that that's the laws of physics of the universe.
Right.
Nobody's going to just give it to you things. So those
Right.
are some examples of uh, I would say moments where authenticity can cost you your comfort, but it returns you to yourself. That's the bottom line of this whole thing. As long
I
as
think
you
what
are okay, then you'll be
no,
fine. No, no, no. I
no,
think that's
no.
the bottom line.
You did. No, I what I liked is the fact that you mentioned that, being answerable to yourself. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to you. But if you're not clear on your own principles and values, as you said, you have to know yourself. And once you're clear on that, you know what you want to stand for, what you want to fight against. I think in your case, it's organically, you're very clear on who you are, what you stand for, which I think is needed in leaders, like because your people depend on you for that. So I'm sure the people who you helped are very grateful for all the things you've done for them. But I want to talk about what happened with you after you lost those jobs, right? I'm sure you had to repivot. And there's a sense of grief that comes with it because it's not the money or the loss of the title or anything, but it's more the relationships that you've built along the way that you have to walk away from too, right? So how do
Uh,
you move through those things?
so I don't know if grief is the right word. I think we all, it'll be wrong of me to say you don't feel upset about it for some time or you don't feel um, disappointment from it. You do. But this also goes back to conditioning. Mental conditioning, the way I talked about how I always ran, even when I was a kid, I always was in sports. So physical movement has always helped me be where I want to be. So that kind of thinking, I've never given up. Like that's the sports gave me that in my life.
Mm,
I was always the guy who wasn't the best guy in the team sometime, but I never would give up. Even if it is the last ball, I'm like, the game is still on. So
mm,
I think the my idea of every time I had some issue, I always went for a run. I always do my physical stuff. Then when I'm walking and running, and that's why people say, let's go for a walk when you're stressed out. What
mhm.
happens? When you move, motion leads to emotion, and your emotion
Right,
changes, different chemicals happen.
right,
And that always grounds me. And once you're grounded, then you're able to see, okay, what are my assets and liabilities? So my assets is not just the money in the bank. Your assets are, I've come so far. I know all these people. I've worked in all these industries. I've experienced all this stuff. That is my asset. I'm not starting from zero.
right.
I'm starting from this amazingly rich, wealthy assets. I've got a lot of wealth here. Now the
Mhm.
question is, how do I direct this wealth and this to the next thing I want to do? And you ask at different times in your life, you ask different questions. When you are single, when you are married, when you have kids, when you have different roles, you ask different questions. So last time, 2 years ago, when I lost my job, the simple question was, what can I do with courage that gives me joy? I did not ask, what can I do that gives me the most money?
Mhm.
I asked, what can I do with courage that gives me joy? And so the answer was three things. I was writing my book. I said, I need to write my book. Second was to public speaking has always been my thing. I love
Right.
public speaking, so I put down I want to do TEDx in the next 1 year, which didn't happen in 1 year. It happened in almost 2 years' time, but it did happen. And I made a lot of connections. And then I wanted to build something. So now I'm a co-founder of an AI company with two other guys, and we are making good progress on it. We are bootstrapping, but we are building that. I haven't made all the money right now in last 2 years, but where we are, where I am as a human being, I'm 100 times better than I was 2 years ago. in my mind, in my soul, in my heart, where I am now. Because all those things I wouldn't have done in last 2 years if I was still doing my last job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I have written a second book since then, which I have not published yet. But so my point is, grief. I'm not so sure in my life I use the word grief or I even go there at all. Where I go is I dig deep to say, I've been through a lot. And
Mhm.
every turn and twist, I've been able to get up with other people's help, my help. I have a big network. I reach out to people, I have helped people, other people have helped me. And that's life.
Mhm.
And that's how you get up and say, okay, um, every reinvention is not the strategy, it's the story. The
Mhm.
story you tell. If I sit down and say, okay, I am done, then my mind will be unresourceful and I will not be able to make progress. But every time you get this setback, so to speak, or a road bump, just sit down and tell the story to say, okay, and sometime maybe you say, hey, objectively, this is what I did wrong. I should
Mhm.
have said this or I should have done this.
Mhm.
And whatever pity party you want to have it for 5 minutes, have it for a day, and then dust it and move on. Because there is nobody coming to save you. If you cannot save yourself, nobody's coming to save you. So start with the story you're telling yourself before you tell the story to the world.
Right, right. Now, what stood out to me here is the idea of fulfillment, right? I mean, we're chasing for things, but here you reframe joy so beautifully, and you're going after the right indicators, which is a reflection. I mean, look at you. You look at peace. You're happy, and it's not generally that you see in people, right? So I think this was amazing what you just shared. So I want to end with the last question here, in terms of your advice to any leader, any founder who's capable, but they're torn between ambition, fear, responsibility. So the question is more about alignment, right? So I think you almost answered the question, but I want to know what more comes out of it. So what should you think they should be focusing on first before touching strategy or direction?
I think one of the things to get clear on is what is good is not necessarily aligned, okay, in life. Oh, let me get that job that pays me $1 million. Okay, you got cash in your pocket, but is it really aligned with maybe you do $1 million job, you don't have a second for you, your family, your friends, your hobby, your other civic duties that you may be involved in, then is that a good move? Now, I'm not going to judge anybody for this because we are a dynamic entity as human being, and every phase of your life, from the time you're born to the time you're a young adult, matured adult, declining adult, eventually you're old and you die, your priorities, your values, your things change with time.
Right.
So you have to be dynamic, and at times there is possibility that I may take up a job that is good but not aligned because there are other competing priorities in my life that I must take care of. But in a larger life, if you look at life as a whole and you start out thinking that way and you start to practice that early in your career, then it becomes easier as you grow up in your career and you have different responsibility, that you can stick with those values and those clarity in life. That good over alignment is very, very important. What is enough for me is important. What gives me joy is important. uh, how can I really help somebody from what I know, knowing that nobody knows everything and you are not so special. Everybody has something special. So everybody's story, respecting that everybody's story is important. And
Yeah.
also knowing this thing about not everybody is expressive
Yeah.
in life because of culture, upbringing, their own personality, whatever it is. So how can you connect to those people who cannot express themselves, because they are no less than people who can express. And as a
Mhm.
leader, if you cannot recognize that in a team, that's one of the biggest mistake you can do, because some of those people who can express probably have the best ideas that will never get implemented. And you got to listen to the silence in the room, read between the lines. Those are some things I would say, and just be you. You know, you're going to have a lot of challenges in leading teams and things, and you may doubt yourself sometimes, but the thing is, dig deep, because you're not starting from zero. Nobody starts from zero. When you are born, you are not starting with zero, because you have the genes of your
Mhm.
parents and your grandparents. So that gene brings something to you. So that is what I would tell people, to be you and enjoy the journey. There's no need to have this long face in every meeting. Come with joy, come with smile.
Yeah, have fun along the way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just absolutely love this conversation, Ravi. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. You brought some amazing points to the conversation today. And I really appreciate how you articulated leadership, not just as a means to the end, right? Like you explain clarity through experience. This is all your lived experience. So, I really want to thank you for that. So for those of you listening, especially any of you guys in a leadership role, navigating any type of pressure, transition, reinvention. I hope this conversation with Ravi reminded you that leadership is not about having it all figured out. It's about staying who you are, and being authentically yourself, right? And you can check out Ravi's work. He has a book which is available on Amazon, which is an amazing story on resilience. And what I'll do is I'll also link Ravi's website as well on the show notes. So if you ever wanted to connect with him, you certainly can. And thank you for being with us today. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoyed it.